Hey, I'm Lee, and I'll be your guide in this video as we do a walkthrough of the Vercel platform. Vercel is a front-end cloud that gives you the frameworks, workflow, and infrastructure to build a fast and personalized web. So let's get into it. With Vercel's front-end cloud, we believe in starting with your front-end framework, and that's why we support over 35 different frameworks, including some of your favorites like React or Svelte, or even Next.js that we've created. So let's get started by deploying a template. I'll head over to our templates marketplace where we have a bunch of examples where you can sort or filter by the framework you want to use, the type of application you want to build, or the Vercel product that you want to use. So we'll pick the Next.js boilerplate or the hello world to get started. I'll click deploy. And you're going to notice in the top left, I'm using my personal free account, which is great for side projects. I've already connected my account to my GitHub repository, but you could also use GitLab or Bitbucket, for example. So it's going to prompt me here to create a new repository. I'll just say product demo, and we're going to make this private by default. And I'll hit create. Now, what this is going to do with the Vercel integration for GitHub or other Git providers is it's going to go out, it's going to create a new repo for me. Going to connect that to my new Vercel project, and it's going to kick off the CI/CD process for me automatically. So I don't have to configure anything extra to actually get my application receiving new code that I push up to my repository. So it pushes up our first commit to actually kick off this hello world. It starts the process of building our application. So I can expand here, and I can see that it's running the build command for Next.js, which is next build. So it's automatically detected which framework I want to use, and it's ran the build process. So it's built just this hello world smallest Next.js application here, taken the outputs from that build process, and actually uploaded those to Vercel's edge network. So in about 30 seconds or 40 seconds here, we get our new Next.js application that's deployed globally around the world on Vercel's high-speed edge network. Now from here, I could either click on my new site and open it up in my new .vercel.app domain, where it's live on the internet for me to share with my friends, or I could actually go into the Vercel product dashboard where I can learn more about my project. And I'd actually love to go look at the deployments. We can see this last production deployment that we just kicked off. I want to talk about our philosophy for how we look at frameworks. So this page gives you a comprehensive overview of how we've built and deployed your framework code. And if we click on the deployment summary, we can see the framework that was auto-detected, what the version was, all of the different static assets that we deployed globally in our edge network, and even functions that we created for your application to have some kind of dynamic compute. Now, that Hello World application doesn't really have much, so I just quickly flipped over to a version of my personal website, leerob.io, where we can see there's even more interesting things happening here, like the individual pages that are generating Vercel functions to dynamically render them on demand, and more that shows both the version that the function's using, the size of it, the location that it's running. We try to make it as easy as possible to show what the framework is actually generating and running on Vercel's edge network. Now, you're probably not just deploying once and then never touching your website again. You want to make updates to your website. So let's go over to GitHub where we see this brand new repository that was created automatically from the Vercel Git integration. And you see a couple things here. You see the code that was automatically created, of course. You see the domain for our application, which was automatically generated. And now let's show what the actual workflow looks like for pushing changes to my application. Now, for the sake of the demo, I just opened this up in the browser here on GitHub, and I'm going to edit a file inside of my Next.js application. So I'll just say hello world, and we can go ahead and actually commit this back into GitHub. So if I go here, I can say push it, and I can commit those changes, and we're going to commit and push those to our repository. Now, if we go over to our commits, we see that, oh, there's this new commit that was pushed directly to our main branch that says push it. So the Git integration picks up and automatically kicks off a build of our application. We can go into Vercel and see this unique deployment that was created because of this push that we just pushed to our application. And now all of a sudden we have a brand new production deployment of our application. Our main branch is aliased to our production deployments. So if I click visit, I go out to the version of our website here, and I see these changes specifically where I see hello world. And if I go back and I see the actual production deployment here, or the production domain of product demo 5 Vercel.app, I can go see what's live for our customers all around the world when they visit our domain. Now, realistically, I might not be pushing changes directly to my main branch. I might be wanting to review those changes and go through a pull request process. So let's go back into our code here, and I'm going to first create a new branch. So we'll call this new changes, and then I'm going to make some, well, first let's switch to this branch here, and then I'm going to make some changes again in this file. So inside of app page, we're going to add a bunch more exclamation points here, and we're going to go over and we're going to commit these changes. So we'll commit and we'll push those to our application. Now back in GitHub, I see that, hey, I recently pushed a new branch. It'd be great if I can make a pull request so I can review those changes with my team. So let's go ahead and do that. And you're going to notice something, which is the Vercel Git integration automatically picked up these changes and it's kicked off a deployment for our application. So let's go over here, check this out, and we see we just built a brand new preview deployment of our application. So this means that these changes are not live in production for our customers. Instead, they're behind the secure Vercel authentication, where I can view these changes with my beautiful exclamation marks here. I could say, hey, these look wrong. We need 5 more. And I can mention somebody on my team if I wanted to. I could include some screenshots or can write in Markdown if I want to. I can maybe do some bold or italic, for example. So this feature is built into the Vercel toolbar and into the preview experience that allows you to comment on specific pieces of your UI. So much like you would comment in a Google Doc or on a Figma design, you can comment on the actual UI, the actual pixels that are rendered on your screen. And this makes it really great to review changes as you're making updates to your application. Now, if I go back over to GitHub, you're going to notice something interesting, which is one, I get this comment that has a link to my application, and it says that there's one comment that's unresolved. Now, this comment is actually blocking me from merging this PR into main because it wants to make sure that I address this feedback. So if I go back over here, let's say I talked to my team, they said, you know what, actually 5 exclamation marks is the right one. I can click resolve here. I could maybe throw an emoji, 100 emoji on here. Okay, cool. We'll resolve this. We'll go back over, and you're going to see it automatically updates to say, yes, this comment was resolved. LGTM looks good to me. Let's actually merge this thing into production. So now I'm going to merge this change. We've agreed that these changes of the exclamation marks looks good. I can go ahead and delete this branch if I want. Let me go back to my main repo here, and I look at the list of commits, and you're going to notice something interesting, which is that I have a new push for these changes. So if I click on here, I go view the deployment inside of Vercel. I see that this was a production deployment because we pushed to our main branch, and it completed successfully, and it's now live at product demo 5 with my brand new exclamation marks I've added to my site. Now, you might have noticed that I talked about preview and production deployments, and I want to talk a bit about the different environments inside of Vercel. So first off, you have deployment, which is actually on your machine where you're making changes inside of your editor. Second, you have the preview environment where you could have an unlimited number of different environments. Maybe this is something that is for a specific branch, and I want to go in and add specific values just to that branch, something like a staging environment or a QA environment. And then, of course, you have your one production deployment environment. Now, let's say I want to add new values or new variables specifically for an environment. So maybe I want to have my value here, and this is going to be product demo. And I only want this to be in my production environment. I don't want this to be in preview or deployment. Now, I can hit save here. I could also copy paste in environment variable files here or import them in directly. I'm going to hit save. We're going to see down below here that Lee added this new value of my value, and I can show the value here, which is product demo. Now, if I want to actually use this inside of my code, let's take a look at what that looks like. So back in my code, let's say rather than having this hard-coded string of text, I want to do something like process.env.my_value. And this is going to be dynamic based on the environment that we're in. So I could actually go back here and say, you know what, my_value, this is going to be preview if it's only in the preview environment, and hit save and have that difference between preview and production. So I put in this new value. I've made a new branch called env_var, and we're going to say add this dynamic value here. We're going to commit and push these up to this branch. Now back in GitHub, we see that we pushed some changes to our branch. So I'm going to hit to make a new pull request, add this dynamic value here. We see we're using process.env.myValue. Again, I'll go ahead and create a pull request so we can review these changes. We see that it's been successfully deployed. So we can go in here and say, okay, let's go look at this preview deployment here. Everything was successful. It took about 27 seconds. So let's go visit this change. We'll get our Vercel authentication. And we see the dynamic value of preview really screaming at me here, letting me know that it pulled this value from the environment variables. But now if I said, okay, let's go ahead and merge this into our production environment, which is our main branch. If I go back over to here, I'll click on the deployments for my application. We see it kicked off a new production deployment. And this is going to pull in that production environment variable from our application. Okay, it's finished. So if I click on here, I should see product-demo, which is the value for my production environment. Now, another thing to mention here when you're looking at your deployments is that maybe you want to lock down so only people who can view these are actually logged into Vercel. So you can go to your settings and toggle on Vercel authentication. Maybe you want that for previews, or maybe you want it for all of your deployments. There's some additional settings here based on whether you're on a free account or you're on a paid pro account. You could throw on password protection. You can customize the suffix of your domain so it's not .vercel.app, but something custom that you want. There's so much more that you can do here depending on the plan that you choose for Vercel. And if you go up to enterprise as well too, there's even additional cool things here like audit logs or SAML SSO or blocking specific IPs. All of this can be found on our pricing page if you want to learn more than what I can go into right now. Okay, so we're now in production. We've deployed our website. We have our CI/CD automatically set up. We're integrated into Git. All our changes are picked up. Well, now what? Now what do we do that we're in production? Well, we have this domain, productdemo5.vercel.app. Maybe we want to do something a little bit more custom. So you could go over to vercel.com/domains. I could say mycoolapp.tech, or maybe something more interesting or exciting than that. I could go ahead and in a couple clicks purchase this domain for my account or for my team. And then back inside of my settings, I can go in and actually add in domains for my application. So maybe I want to add in this new domain that I purchased through Vercel, or any domain that I've purchased in any registrar. Okay, so we got that domain. Now maybe we want to make sure that things are running successfully. So we want to take a look at the logs. So if we click on the logs tab here, we can go in and see all of the different information about requests to our site. So we see all these GET requests for the index route. We can see some additional metadata about the requests. We can filter things on the left based on the status code or the specific function or the host, or whether it was successful or an error. Now, for a slightly more interesting example, we can look at, again, my personal website, leerob.io, which is on a pro plan, and I can look at the logs here. You can see a bunch more logs, and we can actually have a little bit longer duration. We can go back in time and see this information. Plus, of course, there's some info logs where I can dig into people viewing this blog post, for example. There's also a couple warnings here, which looks like some 404s for people trying to access things that don't exist. So I get all of this observability through logs. Now, if I want to take this even further, I can enable monitoring inside of Vercel, which allows me to cross-link logs into this monitoring view that allows me to run queries and save queries and really dig into all of the usage and traffic of my application. So for example, we include some queries by default, like understanding requests to different sites in your account. So you can view those over time and drill in and inspect specific parts of your production or preview traffic, or where your usage is coming from and who's accessing your website. So this is something that's very helpful as well if you want to get further insight into your traffic. Now, what about if I want analytics for my website? Well, Vercel has a product, Web Analytics, that makes it really easy to do this as well too. So rather than needing to use a tool like Google Analytics, which is going to give you free analytics, but at the cost of your customers' privacy, Vercel has a web analytics tool that is a first-party, privacy-friendly solution, has a nice dashboard here that allows you to view your visitors, view your page traffic, understand the top pages, where people are referring your site from, the different countries or operating system or browsers, and hey, even add custom events where you can dig in and understand who is creating these custom events, where are they bringing in their traffic from, and just really have this fine-grained detail into how your site is performing and converting and optimizing as well too. So this is the web analytics product that Vercel offers, but we also have another product. Once you're in production, you want to make sure that your performance is staying great as well too. So maybe you validated things on your preview deployments while you're in GitHub, but then you deploy to production and you want to make sure that things are going well for real visitor traffic. And that's where we have speed insights. So we're looking at here the Next.js website. We can see we've got a real experience score of 100. And we can dial the knobs here. We can see these dotted lines are showing specific deployments that have went to production. So I updated some content here on the homepage, for example. We can drill into specific core web vitals and understand their effect on the performance of our website. And if there's a regression, unfortunately, we could go and say, you know what? We're going to roll back that regression because we saw a dip in our speed insights data. Speaking of regressions, wouldn't it be great if we could instantly roll back to any previous version of our application? So maybe we talk to our design team and they say, you know what? Those exclamation marks that you added inside of that new Next.js site you deployed, we don't want those anymore. So let's say we go to our deployments, again, back on that site that I deployed, and we can filter by our production deployments if we'd like. And we're going to say, let's roll back instantly to this last version of the website. So we're going to have some confirmation modal here to understand, to make sure I know what I'm doing here, and I do want to instantly roll back. And I'm going to confirm the rollback, and we're done. So now you see it updates here to say current. If I go click on this deployment and I go look at our site in production, we don't see that process.env value anymore. We see the old exclamation one as well too. Now, maybe I wanted to go way back, like all the way back to the first deployment. Well, I'm on a free account here, but if you upgrade to Pro, you can have unlimited instant rollbacks. Now, let's say you have a slightly more complex application that's actually hooked up to some dynamic data from a content management system like a CMS or a database, for example. Well, this Vercel toolbar that I've already showed you how to comment on the pieces of your UI can also be used to preview draft content from your CMS and visually edit it on the page as well too. So for example, on the Vercel website, we have a blog that's driven by a CMS, and I'm viewing some draft content right now. Maybe I want to go ahead and click this edit button and actually pick some of the different entries on the page to go ahead and either edit this in line directly here, and we'll see that nice same animation, or I can, more importantly, get linked directly to the entry inside of Contentful. So after logging in, you'll see I'm linked back to the specific blog post inside of Contentful. Now, this could be a bunch of different CMSs. It could be Sanity or Builder, Tina, Datto, Payload. There's a bunch who support this and more coming because it uses an open source spec for how you actually integrate visual editing into your content system. But I could go ahead and make a change here as well too, and have that be reflected back in my draft content that I'm viewing inside of Vercel. Okay, so to recap so far, we picked a framework and deployed it. We actually automatically set up CI/CD and we integrated with our Git provider. We showed some of the different features of the Vercel platform. But there's one other one that's really important, which is you might want to store some content somewhere inside of a database or a key value store. So Vercel integrates and gives you options to use both KV, Postgres, a blob store, which is object storage, as well as edge config, which is really low latency reads from all over our edge network. Back inside the Vercel dashboard, we can click on the storage tab inside of our project, and that's going to give us the option to really easily create any of these different types of databases. So for my personal site, for example, I've already created an edge config store where I'm storing some really important redirects. Maybe I also want to click create a database, and let's say we want to do Postgres, for example. So I'm going to go ahead and call this my Postgres database, and we can choose the region we want to deploy this in. The default is in US East, which is also the default for Vercel functions, which is great because you want your compute and your data to be co-located in the same place. So we'll hit create here. We're going to create a brand new database. Amazing. It's that easy to create our new database. So we've got a Postgres database. We can connect to it with whatever tool we want, whether it's just the native PSQL driver here, the packages that we've created, Prisma, which is really popular, just the native PG package as well. And we've got some steps down below that make it easy to actually use this with whichever framework you prefer. Now, you might be thinking, okay, well, I want to integrate into some other tool that you haven't already talked about. How can I do that? And the good news is that Vercel's front-end cloud makes it easy to integrate with basically any solution, whether that's through code in your framework or whether it's through some of the pre-built integrations that we provide inside of the dashboard. So for example, maybe I want to use a database like PlanetScale. Well, we have this nice admin dashboard template that will get you automatically set up with PlanetScale. Or maybe I want to use some commerce provider like Shopify, or I want to use a headless CMS provider like Sitecore. Well, maybe I can get started from this Next.js commerce template here and get started very quickly building a high-performance e-commerce site. These are all available not only on the pre-built templates that we have, but also on our integrations marketplace, where you can see some of these integrations that will make it really easy for you to get started quickly using your favorite tools. And if you're thinking, well, that's great, but I actually want to integrate into something completely custom that no one's ever seen, we also have a REST API as well as our CLI that allows you the full flexibility of extending our platform. All right, so this has been the Lightning Vercel product overview, where I've walked through some of the main features, but there's actually a lot more that I'd love to show you in another video. So why don't you give us a subscribe and leave a like and let me know what type of features you'd like for me to walk through. In the meantime, if you head over to our pricing page, you can get started completely for free with an account where you can build your side projects. You can get started with a team on a pro account and get access to more included usage for all of the things that you know and love from Vercel now, or you can chat to our sales team about creating an enterprise account. So hopefully you found this helpful. Let me know what you'd like to see us talk more about or build next to help you build your websites faster. Cheers.